Welcome into the KSL Sports Locals in the NFL podcast. I'm your host, Chandler Holt. I have been the NFL writer for KSL Sports for about 2 years now, and I figured it's about time we get a podcast going. So this is episode number 1. We are going to try to come back here every single Thursday, just before Thursday Night Football. We'll talk about the week that was, the week that will be, go through a few segments, just keep you caught up with all of your favorite NFL players who went to your alma mater, maybe your old high school, everyone with Utah ties. We will talk about in this podcast. So starting in the middle of the year, last week was week 4. The first half of the episode today, we're going to talk about week 4, some of the top performers from last week, what they did. We'll also dip into some PFF stats, give you an inside look at what they've been up to so far this year. And then second half of the podcast, week 5 preview, and then some extra segments. And every single week, we're going to end with our player power rankings, where we rank the top 10 players with Utah ties in the NFL. And that is always going to be a subjective, maybe opinionated, controversial list. We're comparing quarterbacks, offensive linemen, linebackers, receivers. Anyways, let's start with the week 4 review, the week that was in the NFL. Bills and Eagles, they are the only 2 undefeated 4-0 teams left for the locals. Let's start with maybe the biggest storyline from the week 4 Utah's locals in the NFL, and that's Jackson Dart. He got his first start. Mind you, Dart went to Roy and then eventually Corner Canyon High School, and then he went on to attend Ole Miss, became one of the greatest Ole Miss quarterbacks in the school's history. Like, you have a school that had Eli Manning and some other greats, and he is up there in his first start against the Los Angeles Chargers, 13 for 20 pass attempts, 111 yards and a touchdown. He scrambled 10 times for 79 yards, and his first ever touchdown was on the ground. Biggest part of this, first win of the year for New York. They win 0-3 under Russell Wilson. Brian Daboll decides to switch to Jackson Dart, and they get that win against the then undefeated Los Angeles Chargers. Some interesting stats from this. He, like I said, 13 for 20 pass attempts. Of those 7 misses, 1 of them was dropped. But there was some other things that may need to be worked on. He was sacked 5 times. We already knew the New York offensive line wasn't anything great. And his time to release was 2.98 seconds. The sort of rule in the NFL is you want to get the ball in under 3 seconds. He did just get there. He wasn't at Caleb Williams, who I believe is around 3.2, 3.3 seconds, and that's why he was the most sacked quarterback last year in the NFL. Got it out in under 3, which is good, but also probably want to get that a little bit lower going forward. Next up, let's talk about Bobby Wagner. He didn't have any tackles for loss, any sacks like the week in week 3, but 10 plus tackles. That makes it 4 straight weeks for Bobby Wagner. And I put out a tweet before coming in to record this today. Bobby Wagner is the 3rd highest rated linebacker in the NFL right now. And mind you, let me pull up Bobby Wagner's ESPN page. He is, I don't want to say old, right? We're talking about professional athletes here. But for NFL years, 35 years old, we're not talking about a quarterback, a linebacker, like one of the most physical, active positions. And like I said, he's still getting 10 plus tackles every single week. Just absolutely crazy that Bobby Wagner is still doing what he's doing at this age. Next up, Tyler Algier. He scored his 2nd touchdown of the season. He had 16 carries for 51 yards and a touchdown. And we will talk more about Bobby Wagner and Tyler Algier later when we get into the player power rankings. But Tyler Algier might be the best backup running back in the NFL. He had 16 carries, 51 yards, and a touchdown. Like I said, and this doesn't entirely make sense, 67 yards after contact. He had a few plays that got pulled back, and a lot of times he was fought through contact in the backfield and then picked up some extra yards there. He had the 2nd highest week 4, and this is according to PFF, elusive rating. And that's a signature stat that measures success and impact of a runner with the ball independently of blocking. So basically, doesn't matter how good of blocks you get, how bad of blocks you get. It's just how well are you carrying the ball and how many tackles are you making? How many tacklers are you making miss? And he is one of the best in the NFL at that. And especially as a backup, like Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier might be the best running back duo in the NFL right now, which is crazy to say. So yeah, the former Cougar has been making things happen. 2nd touchdown of the year. His career high for rushing touchdowns in a season is 4. That year he had 1 receiving touchdown, so his overall career high is 5. He's at 2 through 4 weeks. We could see him approach that career high, maybe even break it as the season goes on. Next up, Dalton Kincaid. Speaking of career highs, he caught his 3rd receiving touchdown in week 4. Before that, both of the first 2 years of his career, he had 2 touchdowns. So already broke that record. And like I said, it's week 4. He has 13 games to go out there and break that record even further than he already has. He could maybe get up to 10, which is crazy to say considering first 2 years has been 2. But it was kind of a slow week for Kincaid before he caught that touchdown. I believe it was in the fourth quarter. He just had the one reception, 28 yards, went for a touchdown. If you look at his PFF stats, he's not an advanced stats darling because he doesn't block very well, to be honest. Like, for example, his teammate, another local, went to Highland and then went on to Georgia Tech. Jackson Hawes is rated as the number 1 tight end, even though he has, like, I believe 3 catches and 1 touchdown on the year, because he is, like, immediately one of the best blocking tight ends in the entire NFL. But for Kincaid, he has 0 drops this year. 92 yards after contact. He catches 40% of contested balls. Basically, quarterback throws it to you and there's defenders in the area. Top 5 tight ends currently for most targets that are contested. So Josh Allen feels comfortable throwing to him even when there's defenders in the area. Next up, Puka Nacua. Puka, man. He finally got into the end zone. He had a 45-yard rushing touchdown a couple weeks ago, but he caught his first receiving touchdown last week. He had 13 catches for 170 yards and a touchdown. He is the NFL's leader in receiving yards right now, and week 4 is when he gets his first catching touchdown. 503 yards leads the NFL, like I said. Second is Jackson Smith-Njigba in Seattle, who has 402. Over 100 yards more than the second leading receiver in the NFL is Puka Nacua. He has the most targets in the NFL. He has 0 drops, and out of 9 contested targets, he's caught 8 of them. So, like, so far this year, not saying he's the best receiver in the NFL, but so far this year, his production has been the best, and there's not much of an argument for that. Now we're going to dive into 2 Utes on different teams. Both got interceptions in week 4. First up, Devin Lloyd. 2 interceptions against the 49ers. His second and third of the season. That tied his season career high, which from, I believe, 2 years ago. Not last year, but 2 years ago. Earlier I said Bob Wagner is the 3rd highest graded linebacker in the NFL. Number 2 is Devin Lloyd, who is kind of this is his contract year, and he's kind of coming around, right? Showing guys like, hey, maybe I am worth that first-round selection you used on me a couple years back. He has been absolutely unbelievable. It's kind of interesting comparing Lloyd to Bobby Wagner, because Wagner's kind of like a tackling machine, and Lloyd is more of a specialized kind of linebacker in coverage. And as you see, 2 interceptions last week. And then Cole Bishop. Don't have a lot to say about Cole Bishop. He had kind of a quiet game, but the interception was ridiculous. The Saints, who the Bills played in week 4, they were going for sort of a trick play end around. I think it started with Shaheed. Shaheed dumped it off to Chris Olave, and then Olave looked to throw it to Spencer Rattler in the end zone. Cole Bishop, he just rises up, snags it with one hand, rolls, takes it back about 10 yards. Absolutely insane. If you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube, look it up on X. We also, on KSLSports.com, have an article up about it. You can see the play in there as well. Last but not least, former Utah State Aggie Jordan Love. It was a very anticlimactic game for the Packers on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys, but undoubtedly through 4 weeks, Jordan Love had his best performance individually. He completed 31 of 43 passes for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also got out of the pocket 3 times for 28 yards. Like I said, anticlimactic. The game ended 40-40 at the end of overtime. It was the return of Micah Parsons in Dallas, and yeah, I feel like that about sums it up, anticlimactic. But again, best game of the year for Jordan Love. If you want to check out more stats, check out these plays that maybe I had mentioned in this recap, go on over to KSLSports.com. If you find the locals in the NFL category, you can see all of our articles from the past week. You can also take a check back at some of our power rankings from previous weeks, recaps from previous weeks. If you just want to get caught up, that is the place to go. I think that'll be about it for the first half, kind of a short first half. And then when we get back, we will talk about the best matchups to watch in week 5 of the NFL, and then get into our player power rankings. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Locals in the NFL podcast with KSL Sports. I am your host, Chandler Holt, Locals in the NFL insider writer for KSLSports.com. Let's get right into it. First thing that we're going to do, talk about the best matchups to watch in week 5. We've done this every single week on KSLSports.com, sort of giving you 4 or 5 games, also some honorable mentions, just where locals will be playing in the upcoming week of the NFL. In week 5, we have 3 primetime games. I believe before we've had one or two maybe, but looking through, I'm always like, how I decide what the best matchups are, right? Like for the Rams are a perfect example. They just have Puka Nacua. Mind you, Puka is elite. He is one of the best locals in the NFL with Utah ties. But he's the only one on the team. So if the Rams are playing, say, for example, the New York Jets, actually the Jets have one local, that's a bad example. Say they're playing the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals have no locals with Utah ties. Then it's like, it's kind of hard to decide because there's an elite player, but it's only one player to watch when, for example, Rams defense, Arizona Cardinals offense is out. There's not a lot to look for. So I try to find at least one on each side when I pick out these best matchups. And then if it is a game like I just mentioned, Puka against a team with no locals, I'll put them in the honorable mentions. There are exceptions to that. For the first matchup in Week 5 to look out for tonight, Thursday, 6:15 p.m., Thursday Night Football, it is the Rams versus the 49ers. There's one local for each team, but you have BYU versus BYU, Puka Nacua, Fred Warner. They'll be on the field at the same time. Fred Warner is the best defensive player in the league this season. And like I said earlier, this season, maybe not. If you want to make just who are the top 10 receivers, he wouldn't be number one. This year, Puka Nacua is performing as the best receiver in the NFL. Again, they will be on the field at the same time. So when it's the 49ers offense, the Rams defense, not a lot to look for when you're looking for locals in the NFL. But still, this is as good as it gets when it comes to two players playing against each other on the field at the same time, and it's prime time. Most of you are going to be watching this game anyways. So that is the matchup to look out for. Puka Nacua versus Fred Warner. Couple of ex-BYU Cougars on Thursday Night Football. Next, game number 2. We have the New Orleans Saints versus the New York Giants. That is Sunday at 11 a.m. First frame of the day. You can look out for this game. Jackson Dart, who I talked about earlier, makes his second start against New Orleans. New Orleans has been pretty bad this year. Defense has not been very good either. So maybe Dart can build upon his first week. I will say this right now. I wanted to, just for the hype, put Jackson Dart into the player power rankings. I did not. If he has a good week, second week as a starter, maybe he's in there. But for New Orleans, first of all, for Giants, it is only Jackson Dart. There is no defensive players, no receivers, nobody else who has Utah ties, rather. Next, for the New Orleans Saints, before injuries hit them, they had one of the most locals of any team. Playing this week will be former Utah receiver Devon Vele and former Weber State receiver Rashid Shaheed. Before injuries, they had former Utah safety Julian Blackmon. In his one game, he was like on pace to be one of the best safeties in the NFL this year. It's one game, so who knows what happened throughout a 17-game season, but he was looking awesome. Really unfortunate to see him out for the year. And then also, they have, former BYU tight end Taysom Hill. Taysom was actually injured last year, and then coming into the year, they put him on, it wasn't necessarily the injured reserve, but it was he's not ready to play yet sort of area for Taysom Hill right now. The most recent update for him, he practiced in a limited capacity on yesterday, which is sort of like, that's what he has been doing all year, practicing in a limited capacity. So we will see when, I'm not going to say if, when he makes a return this year. Next game, we have the Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Again, the Patriots are a team that don't have a lot of locals, but they still do have one. And Buffalo, on the other hand, is probably the best team to watch this year for locals in the NFL. You have former Utah tight end Dalton Kincaid, who I talked about is having a career year. You have rookie, former Highland High tight end Jackson Hawes, who I talked about is an advanced statistics darling. He blocked super well. He got his first touchdown a couple weeks back. He's two players on the offense to look out for there. On the other end for the Bills, former Weber State cornerback Taron Johnson sort of plays in the nickel, picks up more tackles than you'd think for a cornerback. He has been in and out of my power rankings this year. And then for the Patriots, you have former BYU defensive tackle Kyrus Tonga. I feel like I am missing something. Of course I am. Former safety, Utah, for the Bills, Cole Bishop, had his first interception last year. Sorry about that. That is the Sunday night game, like I mentioned. Again, prime time. Most of you are going to be watching the game anyways. Look out for these locals in the NFL, especially Dalton Kincaid, Cole Bishop, they're making plays. At least last week they have. And they're probably going to keep it going into this week, especially Dalton Kincaid. Like I said, if I was a betting man, I would pick him to get 10 touchdowns this year, which is crazy. His career high is 2. He's already passed that. We'll see what happens. Next up, last game to look out for, Monday Night Football, 6:15 p.m. You have the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Kansas City Chiefs. For Jacksonville, on offense, who hasn't gotten a lot of looks this year. He's on the back half of his career. Like when I'm looking through the stats, he's usually getting about 1 to 2, maybe 3 targets a game. You have former Utah wide receiver Tim Patrick. And then on the other end, the playmaker who we talking about last week, Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd is at 3 interceptions. His career high is tied. Maybe he picks off Mahomes. Mahomes hasn't been excellent this year and passes that career high. For the Chiefs, few guys to look out for. Offensive line Kingsley. I need to look up how to pronounce his last name. Next week, I will come back and I will pronounce Kingsley's last name correctly. I'm not going to embarrass myself right now. You have him. You have former BYU, who's now the head coach, Andy Reid, and then also who got his first NFL look last week, former Utah State wide receiver Jalen Royals. He didn't get any snaps in the offense. He returned a punt, I believe it was, for 30 yards. That was his first stats ever in his NFL career. I want to see him get in there. Jalen Royals was, like, after day 1 of the NFL draft, I would not think it would be a crazy take to say that he was the best wide receiver on the board after day 1. So we'll see if he can get some offensive looks for the first time. And then also, not to be forgotten, former Kearns High star linebacker Jeffrey Bossa for the Chiefs. And then, yeah, that's Monday Night Football. So we will see. Maybe Devin Lloyd gets another pick. Maybe Jalen Royals gets his first looks in the offense, not just on special teams. Those are my games. I'll go over them real quick. Rams versus 49ers tonight, Thursday Night Football. Puka versus Fred Warner. Sunday at 11, New Orleans versus the New York Giants. You have 2 receivers for the Saints, Devon Vele, Rashid Shaheed, and then Jackson Dart's second start in the NFL. Buffalo versus New England, Sunday Night Football. You got Dalton Kincaid looking to maybe extend his career high for touchdowns in a season. And then playmakers on the defensive end, Taron Johnson, Cole Bishop, and then Kyrus Tonga for the Patriots. Don't forget him. Monday, last game to look out for. Monday Night Football, 6:15 p.m., Jacksonville. You got Devin Lloyd. Continue to get those picks, break his career high. And then for the Chiefs, I'm really looking for Jalen Royals. I want Jalen Royals to get looks in offense. I'm very high on him. But then at the same time, there's no reason to rush his development. If he's not ready to get out there, don't force him to get out there. At the same time, sometimes you learn the best when you're thrown in the fire. Remains to be seen. Okay. Last thing we are doing today, our Week 4 player power rankings. It is, in parentheses, post-Week 4 player power rankings. I will give you last week's 10-1 really quick. Jackson Hawes at 10, Devin Lloyd, Taron Johnson, Jalen Warren, Penei Sewell, Garrett Bowles, Jordan Love, Bobby Wagner, Puka Nacua, Fred Warner. I will say, I'm going to preface that by saying Jackson Hawes scored his first touchdown of his career after that. And like I said, advanced statistics love him. So I decided it was more of an honorable mention. Maybe some players deserved it more, but I wanted to give him his flowers. Okay, enough talking. Here is this week's player power rankings. We're going to start with number 10. At number 10, we have former East High, Pittsburgh Steelers running back Jalen Warren. He has lived in these power rankings since, I believe, the second edition of them. He's been in the 7 to 10 range every single week. The Pittsburgh Steelers went to Dublin, Ireland last week, and he did not travel. He did not play in that game. But he remains one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets coming out of the backfield. He has been absolutely electric so far this year. Enough said about Jalen Warren. On to number 9, Tyler Algier. 2 touchdowns through 4 weeks. Like I said earlier, his career high is 4 rushing touchdowns, 2 through 4. He could easily pass that number going forward. And then again, is he the best backup running back in the NFL? He really could be. You have Detroit's David Montgomery, Seattle's Zach Charbonnet, a few other guys who probably could be named here, but I do think Tyler Algier is in that conversation. Next, number 8, Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, top 10 in total touchdown receptions, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, everyone. Top 10 for Dalton Kincaid. And most amongst tight ends. He's up there. Like I said, he's going to shatter his career high this year. Number 7, our biggest dropper so far this year, Penei Sewell, former Desert Hills High star. And this may be a little bit controversial, but I'll explain it in a second. Penei Sewell started off my rankings at number 2 in the NFL amongst locals. Fred Warner has held that one spot and is not letting go of it. But Penei Sewell has dropped. He started off the year kind of rough. If you look at PFF stats, he was, I believe last year he was around like 50 to 60th best offensive lineman in the NFL. And now he's all the way down to 7th. But after a good couple weeks, he's all the way back up to rated as the number 1 run blocker and the number 1 overall blocker in the NFL. At number 6, I have former Utah offensive lineman Garrett Bowles. Penei Sewell is rated as the number 1 blocker. How is Garrett Bowles above him? Well, Garrett Bowles is the number 1 pass blocker in the NFL and the number 2 blocker overall behind Sewell. However, Garrett Bowles is a better run blocker so far this year than Sewell is a pass blocker, if that makes sense. And also their pressures, sacks, hits allowed is almost identical. So I have Desert Hills High, Penei Sewell at 7, Utah's Garrett Bowles at 6. Let's keep it going. Number 5, Bobby Wagner, Utah State. Bobby Wagner is named as the number 12 defender in all of the NFL. Regardless of position, number 12 defender. He's 35 years old. Like I said, that is ridiculous. He's rated as the number 3 linebacker in the NFL, and he's tied for 2nd in the NFL in total tackles. Bobby Wagner, absolutely ridiculous, giving Father Time a run for his money. At number 4, our biggest riser so far this year. I believe last week I had him at number 9. Now he's at number 4, Utah linebacker Devin Lloyd. He is rated as the number 6 defender, according to PFF, all these stats, according to PFF, number 6 defender in all of the NFL, number 2 linebacker in all of the NFL, and tied for the most interceptions. You'd think, probably a safety, mind you. If I pull this up really quick, I believe it is a safety that he is tied with. Defensive leaders, interceptions, yes, Kevin Byard, Chicago, has 3 interceptions as well. You would think, cornerback, safety, you have Devin Lloyd tied for most interceptions in the NFL right now. And like I said, number 2 linebacker, number 6 overall defender. So he jumps Bobby Wagner, which is ridiculous. Bobby Wagner has been 3-4 every single power ranking so far. Number 3, we're into the top 3. Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. Like I said, last week he had the best game of the season so far. Over 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. Game ended in a tie, which sucks, especially all of the storylines that were in that game, right? Micah Parsons, of course, being the biggest one that was probably talked about 500 times on the broadcast. Ended in a 40-40 tie, which, sucked. But Jordan Love, top 5 in passing yards, top 3 in passing touchdowns. I believe that makes you, and again, same thing with Puka, maybe not the best wide receiver in the NFL for him, but I believe that makes Jordan Love a top 5 quarterback in performance this year. He only has 1 interception as well. Jordan Love, Utah State Aggie, comes in at 3. Now number 2, which has remained mostly untouched so far this year. At number 2, we have former BYU Cougar Puka Nacua. He is the number 1 rated wide receiver in the NFL according to PFF, and he is the league leader in receiving yards by over 100, like I mentioned to you earlier. 2nd place, 402, Jackson Smith and Jigba. 1st place, Puka, 503. Ridiculous. He had his first receiving touchdown last week, and I believe wouldn't be a crazy thing to say he gets number 2 today against the San Francisco 49ers. Speaking of the 49ers, number 1, he hasn't moved once so far this year. You have former BYU Cougar, again, linebacker, Fred Warner, number 1. He isn't the number 1 rated linebacker, according to PFF. He actually is. Not just that. He's the number 1 rated defender, regardless of position. And he just does absolutely everything for that 49ers defense. He's there in coverage. He attacks the quarterback. He breaks through blocks. He does absolutely everything. He is everywhere for them. And rightfully so, number 1, once again, in our player power rankings. I think that's it. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I will try to be back here every single Thursday, and we'll have a similar structure. Maybe in the future we'll do mailbag questions or add some other segments in, but review of the week that was, preview of the week that will be, and then get into some player power rankings. Once again, I'm Chandler Holt. Thank you very much for tuning in. See you next week.